So here's a question to test our ability to look up numbers in the chi-squared table. So W is a random variable. It is distributed as a chi-squared with 30 degrees of freedom, or V equals 30. So we want to find the value of the 10th percentile. So I'm going to go ahead and draw out approximately what a chi-squared distribution looks like. It's something like this. Okay, and so what we want to be able to ask is, we want to find this value right here such that this is the 10th percentile, which means that 10% of the data is located here to the left. Well, that means that 90% of the data is located to the right. So what we're going to look up in the table is a chi-squared distribution of 90, or 0.90. Right? Because the chi-squared distribution is going to be defined as the area to the right. So if I look at the table here, so notice that the chi-squared alpha is shown right there, such that alpha is this area to the right. And so that's where I'm going to look up that chi-squared 90, because that'll tell me that 90% of the data is to the right. So meaning that we're over here, and this is 90%, which means we're at the 10th percentile. Now I look to see what I have in terms of degrees of freedom, and I have 30 degrees of freedom. So I would come to where those meet, and there's the value, 20.6. So I come over here, and this is equal to 20.6. So that's the value of the 10th percentile based off of this chi-square distribution. Well, what if instead I wanted to find the value of the 90th percentile? Well, now that's going to be over here, the 90th percentile, such that 10% of the data is over here. So in that case, I'm going to look up a chi-squared of 0.10 with 30 degrees of freedom. So I come over to my tables here. And here is my chi-squared of 0.10. So I'm going to work my way down this column. I find 30 degrees of freedom, so I work my way left from this column, and there's where I get the value. So that's 40.25 or 40.26. So what's the value for the 90th percentile? Is 40.26. And that's how we can use a chi-square distribution. Where we're given the degrees of freedom, we want to find the value of the different percentiles. Now let's look at a slightly different question. Okay, knowing that chi-square or W is distributed as a chi-squared with 30 degrees of freedom, I want to know what's the probability that W is between 18.5 and 50.9. So given this is, here are my values. So I'm going to look up this value in table and this value in the table, noting that V equals 30. So the degrees of freedom are 30. So let's go ahead and start at our table. So let's erase these that we had before. So I'm going to look in my table to see where I get 18.5. So I'm going to start at 30 degrees of freedom, and I'm just going to work my way this way until I get to 18.5. And notice that is alpha is 0.95. So that's all the way over here is the value of 18.49 or 18.5. We get 0.95. So in this case, this corresponds with an alpha of 0.95. Now let's look up 50.9. So it's not in this table here. So let's keep going over here to 30 degrees of freedom. And I find 50.9 right there. And so that's at 0.01. So what I've done there, so in this case, alpha is equal to 0.01. So if I were to graph this out, there's more or less what a chi-squared looks like, is with 30 degrees of freedom, 18.5 is right here, and that means 95% of the data is that way. As I look at 50.9, so this is 18.5, as I look at 50.9, 1% of the data is this way. So that's where we would then look at the probability that we're between these points is going to be 95% all the way down, subtract off that 1%. And so this probability is equal to 0.95 minus 0.01 or 0.94 or 94%. And that's how we can use chi-squared and the table to find probabilities and values within the chi-squared distribution.